Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Locker Room Podcast.
Welcome into the Locker Room on this wonderful Sunday with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones. I want to welcome in my co-host. How you guys doing today?
What's up, Jeff? Barrett Jones here. Glad to be with you guys and excited for a great day.
Hello, Jeff and Barrett. Glad to be with you guys. This is my second locker room, and I'm glad to hold down the ladies' front.
I love it. It's going to be a great show today. We will discuss the ongoing saga between Zeke Elliott and the NFL. The MLB umpires have a weird sort of protest of sorts. This is the locker room, so we will be sharing our stories from the field and the court. But I want to start today with the continued silent anthem protest around the NFL. We had Michael Bennett on SportsCenter in a press conference on August 18th saying that he would like some support from his white teammates, and here's him saying that.
He wanted to support, and he wanted to find a way to be able to understand and be able to find a way to impact his community and find out what can he do. And him growing up in a different part of the United States, that helped him to be able to come to this point, to be able to want to be able to help and support me and keep doing what he's doing.
So Michael Bennett asked for support from white teammates. He got it with Justin Britt in Philadelphia, Malcolm Jenkins holding up the fist, getting support from Chris Long. And last night, the quarterback of the Raiders, Derek Carr, putting his hand around Khalil Mack's shoulder. Guys, I'll start with Chiney here. Do you think this changes the way people view these protests?
I do think that it changes the way people view this protest. And, a lot of it comes down to the anthem. And this is going to be a continual narrative as long as things like Charlottesville persist in society. So a lot of times people think with Colin Kaepernick, oh, it's going away. No, it's still alive. The players are still conscious human beings that are passionate about their community. So it'll keep going on. And a lot of times it comes down to me, speaking of Colin Kaepernick, his political views. Do you think a guy like that, and that's a huge talking point, a guy like that deserves to lose his job over his political views? And I don't know if you guys noticed, current and former police officers in New York are standing by Kaepernick along with the NAACP. And people are even on the streets, fans saying that they might want to boycott the NFL in its entirety. So this is an impactful moment with the anthems. But what I like to see, to me, this is the best thing I've seen so far is this unification display, as you mentioned, with Chris Long and Malcolm Jenkins and Justin Britt and Michael Bennett. Those images from the last few days have been absolutely powerful. And we live in a society now that is very extreme. I feel like you have to either be for it or against it. You can't be in the middle. You either have to be far left or far right. But what we're witnessing right now, we've seen, people sit, we've seen people raise fists, but we haven't seen two people together from different backgrounds and that imagery. And to me, that might open some people's eyes and share a little compassion to guys that have been brave enough and courageous enough to exert their political views in a ways that's not voicing, but through actions by sitting or holding a fist during the anthem.
Yeah, Chiney, I totally agree with you. I love this. I love seeing that. This is probably the best symbol I've seen out of all this. Whether or not you're for the taking the knee in the anthem, which was probably not my favorite thing, I love seeing this because this to me is what it's all about. This unity, this unification. This is a symbol to me that's hard to argue with. You see, obviously, sports are not in a vacuum, and there's a lot that's gone on this past week that is frankly very discouraging. And then when you see this, this kind of represents to me all that's great about sports. One of the best things about sports to me is that it takes guys from a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different backgrounds, and it kind of brings them together, trying to obviously achieve the same thing. And so here we have, guys like Chris Long, who I know very well and play with for a few years, who is just a tremendous guy and a tremendous teammate. And he's kind of just making a statement to people that, hey, we're in this together thing. We're in this thing together. We're unified in this front. And so I love the visual image of this. Obviously, Derek Carr following suit with that. Because I think that's one thing that hopefully everyone should agree on, is that we need to be more unified and we need to be together and we need to stand together in this.
This is The Locker Room with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now, that's Progressive. I agree with you guys, and I think it was disappointing to me when you saw these protests as people saying that the players did not support Kaepernick, when in fact that's not the case. Kaepernick was voted the leader in the 49ers locker room, and it's good to see the white players taking a stand with him. Do you think that if this had happened originally with Colin Kaepernick, where he had white teammates publicly supporting him, do you think he's playing in the NFL right now? I'll start with Barrett on that one.
That's a really tough one. The Colin Kaepernick situation is obviously something that there are just a lot of layers to. I think everyone would agree, I'm sure you guys would, that Colin Kaepernick is good enough to play in the NFL. I mean, he's a good enough player. He's got the talent to play in the NFL. So it just kind of comes down to, is there one of those owners, that's going to be willing to kind of, go through all that and sign him? And so far, that the answer's been no. And do I think that's right? No, I don't think it's right. But just to add a little perspective. So I was on a team, the St. Louis Rams, actually, when we drafted Michael Sam. And so I was there when all was happening. And there is, I think, just for the people on the other end of this radio to understand, there's a lot that goes on. There is a lot of surrounding stuff, when the main issue in the locker room is not football, and there's a lot going on. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. It's not right to be afraid of that, maybe, but that is kind of, I think, the issue, I guess, that the owners are kind of shying away from.
And I completely agree, because I was in Stanford. I was at Stanford from 2010 to 14, and that's when the Bay was on fire. And the Giants were winning, the Niners were winning, and Stanford, our team, was winning. And it was just great to see. And then to see how quickly the tide turned on our QB was really interesting, because we brought him in after Alex Smith. And so people were like, this guy's a ball player. And to see how something that is not anything relevant to his sport has completely changed the trajectory of his career is honestly mind-boggling. But I think at the essence of this, and you mentioned this earlier, is the difference between the demographics of who play the sport and who owns the sport. The owners have a lot to say in what happens in a man's career, a woman's career. And for Kaepernick, clearly there is some kind of unwritten or unspoken agreement. Now, we would love to see him in the NFL again. Obviously, you mentioned, I'm speaking for everyone. I would love to see him in the NFL again. But until these demographics between the ownership of the demographics of who plays the sport and the ownership can sometimes find a middle ground, I think this will continue to happen. And it's funny, I'm going to segue because I'm a hooper. I'm going to segue, and this is what LeVar Ball is doing. A lot of times come after LeVar Ball. A lot of people come after LeVar Ball for what he says, and he says some crazy stuff. But what he's doing with his sons is carving out a space of ownership in the sports industry, which is why I tell people, hey, I don't agree with what he says, but I support him. That's why we need to break those barriers down between the player, the athlete, even the front office, and then all the way up to owners, because this type of stuff shouldn't be happening.
I think the issue that people have with LeVar Ball, and this is the issue I have, is that he's taking attention away from Lonzo, who's a fabulous player. My parents are UCLA alums. I watched a lot of his basketball this year. I'm a Lakers fan as well. I feel like he's pulling away from Lonzo Ball. You don't think that's an issue? I
don't think so at all. Obviously, my question is, should it bother you more, or should it bother Lonzo more? And if Lonzo was unbothered, then I'm not going to be bothered, because at the end of the day, when he goes out and plays, he does his thing and he says, oh, that's my dad. He sort of shrugs it off. And I think overall in the Lakers, front office, they could be concerned, but they know they have a solid-headed man that LeVar has raised alongside the future UCLA stars of the Ball brothers. But there's a kid that understands his game. He's unselfish, and that's all that matters to him. Now, his dad could be running the streets and taking attention away from what he's doing on the court, but I think his lasting legacy, Lonzo Ball, will be on the court. And I love what LeVar is doing, trying to disrupt the game. So I think, to me, it's tough to say that LeVar is not a good person because of what he's done, but I like that figure and the role he's played in his son's lives.
So, Chiney, are you in the camp that you think that like all LeVar says is part of like this master plan, that he's got it all planned out and kind of wants the media attention? Because I listen to the guy and I'm just not sure. I hear people say it's all part of this master plan. He's playing the media to get the attention. but he says some pretty absurd stuff.
I agree. No, you're right. Trust me, I don't wear a big baller brand. I rock Adidas. No, I don't think that what he says he means to say, but I do think he has positioned his children since birth to be successful athletes and to fit a certain narrative, and it's worked so far. So we can't underestimate him despite what he says.
I want to, and before we go to break, I think people that don't like LeVar Ball like me, I think he's still a good parent, a good father, a good person. I just don't like his attitude. I think we get those confused at times between not liking kind of the way he's going out and being so flamboyant in the media versus him as a parent. He's obviously a great parent. His kids are well-behaved, well-mannered, good basketball players. I think that, we can separate those two issues at hand here.
Well, that's definitely his biggest strength, is the fact that when you listen to his sons being interviewed, they do seem very respectful. But I just reading those articles about him taking his team off the court because they disagree with the referee and all kind of. I mean, there's a lot of sketchy stuff around the guy. So I'm not sure if I'm ready to just totally brand him a great guy like y'all are, just because there is a lot of smoke. And he's also had some things where he made some disrespectful comments towards some people, and so I'm not quite as sold on him as a guy or a parent or anything, I guess, as you guys are. But I do see that he has made quite a stir. And obviously Lonzo, he has set him up for success, so that part is hard to argue.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
And on the ESPN app.
Barrett mentioned in a segment before about Michael Sam in St. Louis. I think there's a misconception about how much outside forces play in the locker room, this idea of distractions. And to me, when I played, I just wanted my guys to be ready to play Sunday. I don't care what they do off the field as long as they're ready to play Sunday. How do you feel about that, Barrett? Do you agree with the same way I feel about my teammates?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to tune out, all the stuff that's going on. Obviously, I think part of it depends on the teammate. Is a guy a good teammate? And that's an easy thing to tell. And I think, normally when you're on a team with a guy, that's the most important thing that you care about, is how is this guy as a teammate? How is he contributing to the organization? And if a guy is contributing to the organization, we might have different views in other places. And like I said, that's the beautiful thing about sports, is guys, with a lot of different views and a lot of opinions coming together and doing something special together. I think that probably a lot of this is, I don't think the owners really like it. I don't think they like it when, the only thing about their team, in the media is this certain issue. So I think that bothers them. And Chiney, that's just another thing to your point about, how they probably don't, they don't like that being all the talk, and it kind of taking the shine off of their teams maybe.
And I agree. Like you said, you were talking about the beautiful thing about sports. And another thing is that the locker room is a safe space, right? That's why we have these great conversations here on the locker room. But the locker room for everyone is a safe space. But when you strip it down, the anthem means something different for each person. And it's different for each player. And to someone, the flag could mean a loved one who passed defending our country in the Middle East. To another one, the anthem could mean an unarmed black man's life lost due to the hands of the police. So we have so many different places, but we come together in this locker room, and I think we automatically have this advantage as athletes to see each other's points of view, which is why we're talking about those unification symbols. Those are what really emerged, because the locker room is a place where we all put our guards down and we focus on one goal, and that's winning a championship. But do the players really take it personal in the locker room? I bet not, because there's respect. I have a couple friends in the NFL. I went to Stanford, so a couple of my guys are around, and they all have varying viewpoints, and they all say that respect is the most important thing that you have when you're a person, not only learning in sports, but learning about life. Respect is huge. And we live in a country where we're free to share our opinions, and we take that, to advantage at some points. And sometimes it seems like too much. But we're free to express our opinions. And I think, like you said, owners may not be happy with the fact that we express our opinions, but we are human beings as athletes, and we do stand for more than what our stats. A lot of times people tend to judge us by our stats, but we have platforms as athletes. So I think that locker room is a safe space where obviously I think we're working together on both sides, white, black, brown, whatever it is. It's those unification symbols that matter most. And that started in the locker room. You heard Bennett say we were hoping to get white support, and then white support was what happened.
Well, Chiney, I love what you said there. I think that in some ways the world could learn a lot from the locker room, because I don't know about you, but some of the best conversations I have had out of total respect, have been in the locker room, right? Of meeting a guy from obviously a totally different perspective and background, and coming to him with a place of respect and trying to understand, why he believed what he believed. And I think when you have a prior relationship, of respect with that, you can have those kind of conversations. And so, I was the type of guy, I was really interested to kind of, hear out, hey, why do you believe this? Talk me through kind of some of the things that you've experienced that have kind of helped you understand life in this way. And so, I always thought it was really neat. And I had, several teammates throughout the years who didn't mind talking to me about those kind of things and kind of walking me through, hey, this is my perspective. It might be a little harder for you to understand, but here's how I've experienced this, and here's kind of why I'm passionate about it. So that's a really neat kind of vehicle and place where you can kind of have those conversations.
This is The Locker Room with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones. The Locker Room is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Just make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Barrett, you mentioned kind of team chemistry. I've always been of the opinion that winning makes team chemistry better. You won a lot at Alabama. Chiney, you won a lot at Stanford. Is winning really the glue that holds a team together? Because I played on, unfortunately, some really bad teams, and luckily we had good locker rooms. But I've always been the opinion that chemistry is built by winning.
Ooh, that's kind of a chicken and the egg argument there a little bit. I would disagree, honestly. I think that good chemistry builds winning, and that's I guess if you've ever listened to Nick Saban talk, he talks about the process. And yes, I know if you're not an Alabama fan out there, you're probably rolling your eyes at me, but that's my background, and so I believe in that stuff. I believe that if you have good chemistry, that the winning will follow. And that results are not the most important thing. That if you focus on the process, that the other stuff's going to follow. So that's been ingrained to me for a long time, Jeff. So it's hard for me to admit otherwise.
And I actually completely agree, because you can mask mistakes when you're winning, but if you're losing, everybody's in the gutter trying to claw their way out. And it's funny, I was at Stanford, and a lot of top WNBA players experienced this. I was at Stanford, and we were really successful. I went to 3 Final Fours. We won a lot of games. And we had a great, rah-rah camaraderie, because we were always chasing the big dog. Some years we were the big dog, but we always had a chip on our shoulder. Then I get drafted to Connecticut, and what happened on my draft night actually was interesting. Our best player and former league MVP, Tina Charles, got traded to New York. And so when she got traded to New York, I was like, oh my goodness, our team sort of had to look for a new leader. And we've lost a lot the last few years, part of the Connecticut Sun. But this year we're sitting firmly at the 3rd position, almost number 2 in the WNBA, which is huge for us. Big jump. And why did that happen? It's because when we were losing, we got rid of the bad pieces, the bad vibes in the locker room, and we built a chemistry so that when we played, it all took care of itself. So, I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and I do believe that winning is great, and sometimes you can mask your errors. And it's funny, my coach at Stanford would always say, well, nowadays we're millennials and we always want to have fun. Well, she says winning is fun, so we're going to do all the work and not have fun because winning is fun. Well, it's sort of the same type of thing. Chemistry is what really builds into winning. But I respect your opinion.
Well,
he's a Pac-12 guy, so you got to understand. They're not competing for national championships. They have to kind of find solace in that.
You don't even want to start that with us.
Look, I know obviously Alabama, very good. I respect their football program. Oregon has had a good run, considering Oregon gets almost no recruits out of in-state. We have to recruit everyone from out of state, and to even get where we were, I'm pretty proud of that. We should have won.
Congrats on that good run, Jeff.
And in Stanford, we have to recruit, top students as well. So it's not easy over here, but it might be easier over there for you.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
And on the ESPN app.
Jeff from Raleigh, listening on 99.9 The Fan. You're up, bud.
Hey, good morning. Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Just real quick, I appreciated the conversation last segment. Because I think it was very insightful and, more importantly, respectful of each other. But here's an angle I would ask for your opinion on, is that the folks that, the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, there's in the NFL, just like all employers, my job and your job as well at ESPN, there's a code of conduct. Yes, NFL, you can't do drugs, you can't take steroids, right? You can't beat your spouse. One of the things, though, this one of your panelists said earlier, this means a lot of things, the national anthem, to different people, and that's important. But what's also important is that regardless of what it means to you personally, it is our national anthem. And I don't think it's a stretch for owners to want a certain code of conduct to say, for 3 minutes and 11 seconds, everybody should stand in silence. You have social media, you have the locker room, you have news reporters to give your opinions on each and everything. But for that 3 minutes, we are all Americans. And I would just offer that and just welcome your feedback.
Well, the NFL has never said you can't do that. The NBA actually has a policy where you have to stand for the national anthem. So there's no code of conduct that NFL players are breaking by deciding to not stand for the anthem.
Exactly. And I think you're speaking to me. And, that's a great point that you raise. If they do put in the policy, then maybe that would solve the issue. But I play in the WNBA, and last season, I'm not sure if you ever saw, we broke our policy as players and wore Black Lives Matter shirts. And I know that not everyone agrees on the Black Lives Matter movement, but we cross that threshold. So even if you impose, I think, this policy, people may still cross it. And like I said, it's not a part of the game. And if your coach is still going to let you play, you might just get fined. So even though imposing a policy may dissuade, it may not stop it. So you might continue to see it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, moving on to Zeke Elliott. We had a little debate off air about Zeke, and I know Barrett is fired up about this. So Zeke Elliott, a year-long investigation by the NFL. They suspend him. He appeals the suspension. We're in the appeal process right now. Things are getting ugly between the NFL and the NFLPA as we go through kind of a discovery process, but a public discovery process. The NFL's 160-page memo got leaked. The PA has given details away to the media, strongly worded letters going back and forth. So personally, I think that the NFL should stay out of the investigation business. I think that it's very odd for a company to do their own investigation outside of law enforcement. All the details in the report were originally in the Columbus Police Department report. They could have used those to suspend Zeke. I understand why he was suspended. I get why the NFL went ahead and did this. If I was Zeke, I would take my 6 games, be done with it, and get ready to play the rest of the season. I know, Barrett, you feel strongly about this subject. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, Geoff, when are the NFL and the NFLPA not arguing? They're always at ends and at odds. And I think whatever the NFL says, the NFLPA just wants to say the opposite just to say it. But I think obviously this is a complex issue that really, when you look at it, is kind of traced back to Ray Rice. And, obviously what Ray Rice did was indefensible. But the NFL, totally butchered the way they handled that whole situation. It's 2 games. Oh, the video was leaked. Just kidding. Public perception. Now people are hating on the league. Did we say 2 games? We meant indefinitely. So that was obviously that was totally butchered. And there's kind of been time and time again. The policy is definitely something they need to take a look at in the next bargaining agreement. I'm sure we'll get there. Talking about Roger Goodell right now pretty much has a license to do whatever he pleases and kind of decide the punishment. All that being said, I really believe in my heart of hearts the NFL got this one right. And that's an unpopular opinion probably right now. Now, did they take too long? Absolutely. But I listen when things like this happen, I listen very carefully to the comments. And all the comments I hear out of Zeke and his camp is, hey, the NFL didn't handle this right. It's, hey, let's discredit this girl and what she said. It's not, hey, I'm totally innocent of this, I didn't do it.
Like there wasn't Tom Brady when he was like, I didn't do it.
Right, like he has never really said that, like, I didn't do it. Like, it kind of seems like he did it, And I mean, I don't know that for a fact, again, and I get that we can't try it in the court of public opinion, and there has to be a burden of proof, but it seems to me like Zeke did it. And so, again, I have no proof of that, obviously. The NFL, seems like they did their own investigation, and so just the way the narrative, kind of the things his lawyer tweets out and the statements they make, it just kind of comes off as disingenuous to me, and it frustrates me because, it seems like there was foul play here, there was bruising, there was all kind of, smoke. And so a lot of times when there's smoke, there's fire. I agree with you. I think Zeke deserves 6 games. I think you should take it and be remorseful for it, issue a statement saying he's sorry. And I think that's the best way for him to move on.
And even if he did do it, everyone deserves, though, the chance and the right legally, even if you're an athlete or just a regular human being, to appeal. And to me, it was interesting. You asked, should the NFL stay out of it? But when they released a statement on August 11th, they mentioned there was substantial and persuasive evidence that Elliott used physical force against his former girlfriend over several days. So to me, even if I thought this situation was close the book on the chapter, what happened to Ohio State, when I read that as a league, I'd be like, oh, is there something new? Is that why they're coming down hard on him? And oftentimes, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. That also goes with his name. Ezekiel Elliott does have a history of having minor and now major issues. And as a player, you don't want your name to come up often at all with anything outside of the game unless it's good branding for you, philanthropy, or something you're passionate about. And his name off the field has been coming up for the wrong reasons.
Right, and I think, Janae, I think that is the thing behind this whole issue, the branding thing is, at the end of the day, Roger Goodell, what he cares about is the branding of the NFL. I mean, that's really it. I mean, that's what he's paid to care about by these 32 owners. You know, I mean, I don't know him personally. I'm not saying he doesn't care about the issue of domestic violence, but that's what he wants is for the shield, as they call it, to be protected. And so, you know, you look at just kind of the overreaction, the inconsistency, whether it's, you know, Josh Brown, the kicker for the Giants, you know, there's a lot of inconsistency there. It's just been rifled with inconsistency, and it almost seems like the NFL just tries to get away with punishing the guys as little as they can, you know, without public perception being negative on the NFL. And so that's why I think this is the right call. And
then when the public finds out, then we're super harsh. So like,
exactly.
You can't have both.
Exactly, because I mean, I don't buy for a second, like, and going back, sorry to interrupt you, Jeff, but that they didn't know what happened. I mean, Ray Rice said, I hit my fiance. You know, then a video comes out and, oh, wow, you hit your fiance. I mean, again, that's a terrible thing to do. But I don't understand, you know, the disconnect there. All of a sudden, the court of public opinion tries this guy and convicts him, and so now we're going to overreact and suspend him indefinitely.
Janae, you brought up a good point about the public reaction. So I find it odd that when an NFL player gets into an incident like this, I feel like the public turns to the NFL for quote-unquote punishment versus looking to the law enforcement for any sort of punishment for their crime. Do you feel the same way? I think it's odd that we get so fired up about what the league should do when the league is a sports league versus what the Columbus Police Department should have done in their investigation.
I completely agree. I think Roger Goodell honestly has handled each situation one by one, but not realizing that book he's stacking one by one is now about to tip over because there's no consensus. And I think here in this instance, because it's domestic violence and that is a hot button issue throughout our country, he wants to make it clear with this young star in a great market with a bright future that the rules apply to everyone. He got in trouble with Ray Rice. He's going to try to start setting a precedent that there's no exceptions. But overall, there's still confusion because we're like, hey, look back. You remember this and you remember then? Oh, they only gave this. Oh, we appealed, dropped it to 4. Who sets the tone for the infractions? And I think that's a fascinating question. Is it the NFL? Is it Goodell? Is it the NFLPA by kicking back? Is it the justice system? Should we take our lead from what happens in society, the justice system, and say, hey, we agree with them? That's the confusion. And I think that's why these negotiations with the CBA that might happen in the next few years, there needs to be some kind of consensus. So when these situations happen, we're like, hey, we can move on as a public. We won't be on Deflategate for 2 years. You know, we'll move on as a public to at least give the game, your brand, as you mentioned, the brand of the NFL, a chance to be successful, not just the headlines of all the things that happen to the players to be the ones we run with.
Well, the way this is going, this might take another year. That'll be 2 years for this. Barrett, before we get to break, do you think Zeke should take his punishment now or go through the whole process of appeal, of suing the NFL? What do you think, and how do you think he should handle his appeal process?
Well, you know, I definitely think it's confounded. I mean, obviously it depends on whether or not he did it. You know, if he did it, I think he should show remorse. I think that's the best way for him to move on. You know, again, I'm not sure he'll ever come to the point where he admits I did everything that was in this memo. But if I were him and I was truly sorry and wanted to not further tarnish my reputation, I think it shows a lot to say, hey, I made a big mistake. You know, maybe not everything is true, but some of that stuff is true. I made a mistake. I'm accepting the punishment. Let's move forward. That would definitely kill part of the news cycle at the very least.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
And on the ESPN app.
We are talking about the NFL versus NFLPA. They are in a battle as usual over the Zeke Elliott situation, and we are barreling toward another lockout in 2021. I was part of the lockout in 2011. It was very contentious. I don't think it was something that we thought would go as long as it did. And here's D. Smith talking to MMQB last week about the reasons why there will be a lockout in 2021.
There is no uncapped year because last year, the last time we went through it, we found out that the owners lied and cheated about the uncapped year. All of the mutual benefits that were supposed to happen as a result of the opt-out didn't happen. We found out they colluded with each other, and all of the bad things that went to the players happened, and none of the bad things that went to the owners happened. So we have a new deal where if it doesn't get fixed, you head into a certain small A Armageddon.
Look,
what's a small A Armageddon?
I don't want a big Armageddon, nor small.
I don't know where to start with this. I mean, I was part of that uncapped year in 2010, and the benefits that we did not get back, our 401k for that year were player performance, which I would have actually made more than my salary that year. I played every snap as a 7th-round draft pick. But we knew the lockout was coming, and we know that there's a probable lockout now. To me, and I know Barrett agrees with this, and I'm fascinated to get Chiney's thoughts because she is the WNBA vice president of the Players Association. I'll start with you, Barrett. I think we agree on this, that the NFLPA needs to find a way to work better with the NFL.
Well, there's no doubt. Like you said, there just is a hostility, and Jeff, from being in those meetings, it's like you have NFL meetings and you have PA meetings, and what they spend most of their time doing is just bashing the other side, to us and trying to sway our opinion. And it's almost one of those situations, like when you're watching a movie and you're not even sure who the good guy is. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes when you're in there and you're thinking, man, this guy's supposed to be on my side. And he's saying all kind of stuff. So it's a very confusing situation. You're not sure who's really got your back. The answer is probably really no one. Everyone kind of wants what they want and is looking out for themselves. And, I do think there'll be a lockout in 2021 because, there's just such a hostile environment right now and approach towards the NFL. There's no sense of let's work together to make the game better.
Chiney, you're looking at this from an outsider's perspective, being the WNBA PA vice president. How do you view our situation? And maybe you could talk about how the WNBA owners and the WNBA PA handle their collective bargaining agreement.
Sure. So my older sister, Neka, who plays for the LA Sparks, at one point a couple years ago was the vice president, and then she became president, and she was like, Chiney, if I'm going to be president, I want you with me because, we squad, we do everything together. But she recruited me to join, so I'm now vice president. So what we've learned overall is how to balance advocating for players while also maintaining respect for the league, sort of putting your foot on both sides of a balance beam. But overall, when there's a gray area, that's when there are issues. For example, with regard to the NFL, an arrest happens or a failed drug test or a domestic violence incident, or even agents who are bringing a lot of times in the Players Association, it's a lot of dealing with agents and contract questions. You wonder, the best thing that can happen for you in the Players Association is having rules that set the stone, because you need players in leadership positions, most importantly, that understand the rules. And if they realize that the rule is not fair, they can take that up in a proper way with the league. You need people that can personally reach Roger Goodell if deemed necessary and bend his ear, because if he cannot hear you, he cannot help you. And I know that today I can call Lisa Borders, our president, and say, hey, I have this issue. I want to bend your brain about it. She's not thinking that I'm coming with the Players Association point of view. She just understands that this is an issue that I'm speaking on behalf of others, our constituents in the league. So obviously, and when it comes to the CBA, those issues in the CBA don't magically drop out like Casper and appear. They come from, they're built upon years. And the key is, and I always tell people, you have to take a tally. When there's an issue, write it down, keep a tally. See if that's something that's persistent, something that you can correct and be done with it, or something you need to address with the next CBA. And the key to that is keeping a tally. So doing your homework, but also having good leadership. For a long time in the WNBA, we had the same leadership for a long time. This year, last year was my sister's first year. This is my first term. So we're entering our second years. It's fresh faces. It's young players that are passionate. So you have to make sure you have the fresh, right faces. And sometimes, like my sister did, you have to recruit those people, the people that are outspoken on issues. That may seem like, oh, I don't know if you're going to participate. I'm already balling. No, you have to get those guys and spark their interest so that their voices are heard. And like you said, maintain a good communication. Everything has to be healthy. Like all relationships, you need healthy relationships. Just because you're on the different side of the negotiating table doesn't mean you don't have the same goal. So those are my keys for the CBA and the NFLPA. I think you make
some fantastic points there, just talking about communication and relationship capital. The funny thing, not funny, the frustrating thing about this relationship to me is that I feel like most of it is done in the media. What does the NFL? The NFL releases a statement immediately. What does the NFLPA do? They release a public statement, condemning the NFL. It's just all kind of through the media, basically bashing each other. And I'm sure there are conversations that are taking place, but it doesn't seem like there's that relationship of, hey, let's talk, let's kind of come together as a united front, work something out together, maybe negotiate this thing behind closed doors before we take it out to the world. No, it's like, hey, this is what the NFL thinks. The PA fires back at, the NFL is stupid and we hate them and they're wrong on everything. That's kind of generally the tone of most of the PA statements, and it always seems like it plays out on the media versus behind closed doors in that kind of relationship way that you talked about.
And in my opinion, it won't change unless you have that one player that forces that change. So you need someone that will go outside of themselves, maybe even sacrifice their opinions in their perspective of the Players Association to reach out and say, hey, this is not how things are done. Because you need an and it doesn't even have to be a player. It should be your executive director. But if they can't do it, the players have to step up because you have to take ownership of your game and the reputation your game has as well.
This is the locker room with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones. Barbasol, the brand America trusts for close shave, has razors, premium disposable razors with an advanced pivoting head and ultra-thin blades. You're looking good, America. To both you guys' points, the MLB and NBA have stars who are the head of their unions. The NFL does not. Do you think the NFL, I'll start with you, Barrett, do you think the NFL needs to have their stars, their quarterbacks, their big players be union reps?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if it's going to change, it's going to have to be from those guys. And the thing is, the bottom line is, if it's going to change, those guys are probably going to have to make some sacrifices. I mean, that's where, you look at the CBA, and obviously there's a lot that goes into it. But basically, from an outsider's perspective, it kind of looks like pretty much all the extra money we got last time just went to the quarterbacks, and everything else stayed the same. And so if there's going to be change, it's got to start with those guys. And, so that's an interesting dynamic of, do they want it to change? Because it's a pretty sweet deal for them right now, right? The quarterback situation. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how it all develops. But I'm totally with you that if you really want to have change in the league, it's got to come from the star players, because when they speak, whether it's right or not, people listen. People in the league listen. People from the outside listen. People hear what those guys have to say, more so than, a defensive tackle or, another position where, they're not quite as known as a quarterback or a star player.
And I agree. Like, we're at the point in sports where and you mentioned the MLB, also the NBA, but in the NFL, even in the NFL, you think about the names Brady, Odell. Like, people also know that as household names without even thinking. But we're at the point in sports where players are becoming bigger than their teams in some respects. So yeah, you might lose yourself and you lose a little bit of yourself, put yourself on the line, sacrifice some fan reaction, and you might have this pristine image. But the greater good is what people will see. You're serving your NFL. So I think that even though these players are becoming bigger, they also have an obligation to the game, a responsibility to make it better than when they entered.
I think it's hard for the veteran players, like Barrett said, who make so much money, to want things to change. The rookie wage scale was put in there as kind of this carrot, like, hey, we're going to pay the veterans more, and it has not happened. The middle class in the NFL is gone, completely gone. It's starting to slowly rebuild, but we have a rookie wage scale where the salaries are put in place for 4 years.
Yeah, we call it the rookie scale in the WNBA as well.
Yeah, it's all, and then the very top end, that's it. And there's no middle class. So we've definitely lost that part in the CBA negotiations.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio
and on the ESPN app.
We are talking about holdouts in the NFL, the NFL versus NFLPA. Two high-profile NFL players. The Los Angeles Rams, still feels weird saying that. Aaron Donald, stud defensive tackle, is holding out. And Le'Veon Bell, technically not a holdout, hasn't signed his franchise tender yet, has not shown it, but I expect him to hold out. Barrett, you played with Aaron Donald. How special of a player is Aaron?
Well, Aaron Donald is, quite frankly, one of the best defensive tackles I've ever seen. I mean, I had to block this guy every day in practice. He came in my second year, and from the first day, you knew this guy was going to be special. You look at him, he's pretty short in stature for a defensive tackle. He's he's around 6 feet or 6'1", but the guy is an absolute freak. I mean, just what's really tough in a pass rusher is when you find a guy who has a unique combination of strength and speed, and this guy has it all. I mean, if you set back on him, he can absolutely destroy you with strength, but he has the quickness off the ball that is extremely rare, particularly for an inside guy. So he is, in my opinion, the best defensive tackle in the NFL. He's an extremely special player. He will get paid. I think jumping into this, I understand his holdout a little bit better Obviously then Le'Veon Bell's. It's hard to know exactly what he's been offered and how that's all going to go down. I would imagine, that they're going to get something worked out because he's going to get paid a lot. But I think the question that teams ask themselves, from a grand scheme kind of deal with the salary cap is, do you want to pay a defensive tackle that much money? I think that's more the question, because the question is not, is Aaron Donald worth a ton of money? No. And when he hits the open market, he will get paid a fortune. The question is, from a salary cap perspective, do you want to pay a defensive tackle that much? And some teams would say no.
Well, if you look at J.J. Watt and the Texans, he was out last year, and our defense was still number one in the NFL. So obviously having him back is a big deal. But to your point, a lot of teams feel that in paying interior linemen, even guards and defensive tackles, is not really worth it. Chiney, looking from the outside, how do you feel about NFL players holding out and trying to get the most money they can?
Well, looking from the outside, I think every athlete, every pro athlete was watching the NBA after their salary deals were coming out.
Oh man,
so jealous.
It got all of our attention, but it also brought about like a stubborn urgency in us. And I definitely believe Aaron Donald has the right to hold out because the man is a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's proven he's earned his right to renegotiate. The only thing slowing him down is, as you mentioned earlier, was that there's little cap room, even outside of a guy being a defensive tackle. There's little cap room to just throw it quickly with no regrets. But he has every right. Like when you see a guy like Tremaine Johnson getting paid, next year you're going to be like, you know what? It's my turn. I earned this money. But this is actually a little personal for me because last November, I injured my Achilles playing, which is why I'm here at ESPN working, which is like a blessing in disguise, turning lemons into lemonade. I was entering my 4th year like Donald. I was fortunate to have been named an All-Star the years past. And even though I was injured, I knew that I had to think about my future at this point. So I worked over the next few months with my Connecticut Sun team to really say, hey, if I'm going to make this comeback, I want you guys to make sure it's mutual on both ends. And then I signed a contract extension. So these are all normal things. It's just that mine was not in the public eye. His is in the public eye, as many are in the NFL, because when you're missing workouts or you're missing games, it's evident. And in the WNBA, we have the ability, the luxury to do it before we play. Nonetheless, I think the key, and we all know, the key is while we're playing and putting our bodies on the line, are we getting our value back?
Well, sorry, Geoff. The thing is,
it's all about leverage and value.
It is all about leverage and value. And I think I understand Aaron Donald's holdout a little more than Le'Veon Bell's. And let me tell you why. So, I guess, like you said, Geoff, Le'Veon Bell's is not officially a holdout. He just hasn't signed yet. But for the way, if you don't know how NFL contracts work, Le'Veon Bell cannot even sign a long-term deal anymore. That window has passed. So at this point, he either has to sign the franchise tender or the Steelers can cut him. And I don't really think that he wants the Steelers to cut him this year. So I guess I don't really understand his end game of what he wants, because at this point he's kind of just hurting himself and not getting the reps. And so I think that's why you see the frustration from Kevin Colbert, the GM, from Mike Tomlin, because they really don't understand why he's not reporting. I saw an article the other day that said, maybe he doesn't want to be with the Steelers long term. Maybe he wants to tick them off so much that they let him enter the open market next year. So, I don't really know what his motivation is, but I think I understand Aaron Donald a little better than Le'Veon Bell because at this point, it's very likely Le'Veon Bell will play for the Steelers this year. He just has to sign that franchise tender.
Yeah, to the point about Bell, I think he's just trying to make the Steelers sweat. I agree with you. He'll be back week 1, but I think he wants to show them in the preseason, look, if you don't have me, this is what your offense will be without me. I'll ask you, Barrett, first. What leverage do you think Aaron Donald has here? As players, I don't feel we have very much, and if he keeps missing games, he'll miss game checks. What leverage does he have? Yeah,
obviously, Aaron Donald's only leverage is just Aaron Donald. The fact that he is a tremendous force in the interior of that defensive line and the best defensive tackle, in my opinion, in the NFL. And so, that is his only leverage. And sometimes that can be tough because, financially, contractually, there's not a whole lot of legs he can stand on. And, I think the way it works is kind of silly to me, with the old, I remember thinking back to the Alex Boone holdout a few years ago where, they just are advertising the amount of fines. There's so many fines, hundreds of $1,000s. And then what do always when they sign the new deal?
Erase them.
They waive the fines, right? So, it's just a lot of talking. It probably will end up that, all the fines are waived, a new deal is signed, and everything's fine. But I agree, there's not the way it's set up right now, there's not a whole lot of leverage. And, then you have Le'Veon Bell with the franchise tag. That's a whole nother deal. You see, obviously, players like Kirk Cousins who's used that to his advantage over the past few years. But for a running back with like Le'Veon Bell, that's a little bit of a riskier proposition with the chance of injury. The fact that your career can change so quickly as a running back. So this is it's a tough issue in a lot of ways. But I'm with you, Jeff. I think the bottom line is the players don't have a whole lot of leverage except for themselves. That's really the only leverage they have.
And Barrett, you're right. In negotiations, when your team is playing, is totally betting on yourself. And like you mentioned, the difference between Bell and Donald is that the athlete has to know their end game when they enter these negotiations, which we'll find out.
Chiney, are there holdouts in the WNBA? Like, if you want an extension, and you got an extension, how do you go about fighting that with the team?
It's way different because the WNBA runs, for people that don't know and should attend a game right now, it runs from May to October. And from October to May, we go and play around the world to overseas. So I played in Italy and I played in China, loved both places. My older sister played in Poland, China, and she's entering her 4th year in Russia. So we know that we have a great backup plan if things don't work. And I think that's why the WNBA, we have to come from a place of humility because we know that people might do what Diana Taurasi did and just sit out a WNBA season. So our negotiations are completely different. Nonetheless, with injury and anything that can happen in sports, negotiations are totally betting on yourself, whether you're coming back from injury or whether you're just, on top of your game. You have to know your end game.
When you work overseas in the offseason, is there a WNBA team involved in any of that process?
Nope. Church and state, completely different. Completely different. There's a whole new rule set for going overseas versus coming to the WNBA, but we've worked well together. Like, there's a little crossover, but we've worked well together.
And you don't feel worn out when you go play your WNBA season?
Oh, we all are always worn out. But when you get paid, you're going to show up. You're going to show up.
I mean, I guess if the NFL had a spring league and they paid us for that, oh, man, I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know, Jeff. I don't know.
I don't know if I could play 16 games and then go play another 7 games in the spring. That'd be a lot.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
And on the ESPN app.
So, Chiney went to Stanford. Geoff Schwartz, me, went to Oregon. Barrett went to Alabama. We have had lots of rivals in our career. I'm sure we have rivals now in our professional leagues. So, at Oregon, there's Oregon State. They're like the stepsister. They weren't really our rival. Our rival was Washington, and we hated Washington because they have money. They think they're a big dog. They've kicked our butts year after year in football until I was there. We won 12 in a row. Now that was over after Washington dominated us this year. Barrett, I'll start with you in Alabama because SEC, they have deep hatred for their other schools. Auburn's your biggest rival. Was there a second biggest rival?
Well, first of all, Jeff, I didn't really like the way you came into the segment. I feel like there was some subconscious ranking going on there. You were like, Chiney went to Stanford, I went to Oregon, and Barrett went to Alabama. Like, if you could even call that an education.
Well,
that's what I heard.
Stanford is number one. Let's be quite honest. I would have gone there if I had.
I get it. I'm just saying that I just don't appreciate that. I mean, we're the Harvard of the South.
Oh, really?
We are a very prestigious university. So back off Bama, man. It's a great education. Anyway.
I went to the 2011 Alabama LSU game, the 9-6 game.
Right, yeah.
I had a great time in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, it was a great town.
It was fantastic. We got there at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a night game. We tailgated all day. We got back to Birmingham about 4 in the morning. I had a great time.
It's fantastic.
Knocking Alabama.
It's a great place to watch a game. Okay, so our biggest rival is Auburn, like you said. But I think that just for the rest of the country, the people living in the South, they understand this. But I don't think that people fully understand the rivalry, just kind of the intensity of it. When you are in kindergarten in the state of Alabama, you must declare your allegiance. And based on that, that's where you sit in class. You sit with the Auburn fans, the Alabama fans. You want to, kind of separate them so there won't be too many disturbances. It's the only show in town in the state of Alabama is college football, pretty much. That's what everybody cares about. There's no pro teams in the whole state. And so that is what people are passionate about. I didn't really understand it. I didn't get it. I'm from Memphis. I grew up an Alabama fan, actually, because my dad went there. But I didn't really fully grasp the Auburn thing. Even in my first few years, we beat Auburn. My freshman year was the first time in 6 years, I think. It was a big deal. Everybody was really excited, pumped up. But still, kind of just another game to me. But my third year came along. And if you're a football historian, 2010 Alabama-Auburn game, we were up 24-0. They came back, ended up winning 28-27. And the quarterback was one Cameron Newton that year. And I will never forget, after the game, he came over and did that thing that he does where he covered his mouth and he pointed at us and was laughing. And that was the moment that I really got it, that I understand, like, wow, I can't stand these guys. And ever since then, I mean, just the color scheme, even when I see it, it makes my blood boil. So it's hard to really grasp that. Our second biggest rival, to answer your question, Jeff, is Tennessee. But the fact that we haven't lost to Tennessee since 2006, that kind of negates that a little bit. It's definitely right now all about the Auburn hate. If you're an Alabama fan, you can't, like, there's no kind of middle ground there. You can't, say, oh, I root for both teams. Like, no, you have to choose one or the other at an early age, and you have to stick with it.
You know what's funny, Barrett? You are right about the South in football. Because I grew up in Houston, Texas, which is the dirty South.
That's
Would you
the fake
agree?
South.
No,
That's fake news.
It is the dirty South. We cool. We have a little swag with it. You heard the music.
It is dirty, that's for sure. I don't know. I don't know if it's the South.
No. We dirty. We're dirty. We're chopped and screwed. You just don't understand. You don't have appreciation, but we don't claim you anyway, so it's all right. You can stay out of Texas.
Y'all, Texas is their own thing. They have their own stickers. They have "Don't mess with Texas."
We're our own country.
Exactly. So
that's why you're salty. You're mad because you can't join. I'm sorry.
We have our own thing going on the South. We have this delicious sweet tea. We have a whole culture.
I'll drink your tea. I'll eat my barbecue and Mexican food.
We have a certain accent that goes along with it. Like
I can turn on my Texan accent real quick.
You're
I'm
not
just saying,
a part of that.
I went to Stanford. I sort of lost it a little bit, but I can turn on my Texan accent
Cowboy
real quick.
hats are not Southern. They're not Southern.
Are you going to let me finish?
That's Western.
I'm going to finish. Well, as soon as little boys walk in the dirty South, they put on football pads. So I understand. I was actually trying to pay you a compliment, but I'm just going to go ahead and do my answer. UConn was definitely my team's rival when I was at Stanford, Jeff. Honestly, Cal should be our rival, but we sort of dominated Cal the whole time, the same way you guys dominated LSU. But anyways, imagine me being a freshman. I was, doe-eyed like a deer as a freshman, and your coach says, Chiney, this is your first year, game 5 or 6. Your job is to guard Maya Moore. And I know you guys are football guys, but I hope
we know Maya Moore.
Good.
Give us a little credit.
We're not totally uneducated.
I assume you know the least, but I'm going to educate you guys again. But anyways, so my job was to guard Maya Moore, and I don't remember the game, honestly, because my only job was to guard Maya Moore. I could tell you what toothpaste she used. I could tell you what detergent she used on her jersey. That was my job, and we won. That was a huge game. We broke their streak, even though they started another and even more ridiculous streak, which just ended. But my job was to guard her 24/7. UConn at Stanford, we had some amazing back-and-forth games. I don't really like to make teams or players my enemies because I don't know if it's the same as you guys, both Jeff and Barrett. When I play, I literally think I hate my opponent. So it doesn't matter if we're playing UConn or we could play Cal or we could play, a D2 school in the preseason. I'm hating my opponent. So everybody is my rival while I'm playing, and that's my opinion.
This is The Locker Room with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you save before you switch. So obviously I'm a Pac-12 guy. I guess Pac-10 when I was there. My brother went to Cal, and I will say, Chiney, Cal and Stanford have a very terrible rivalry. There's so much to do in the Bay Area. I don't feel there's any hatred whatsoever between the two programs, even in football.
Yeah, it's very fluffed over just to get us excited about tailgating, pretty much, that rivalry, the big game.
So would you agree that we all just don't like USC?
100%.
No one likes USC.
I don't know if it's just me, but when the mascot, and by I say mascot, when
Traveler.
When you're at a football game and a horse comes out and someone dressed up they look like they came straight out of the movie of Troy, I'm just like, they doing too much. They're really doing too much. And then you hear the dun 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 na 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 na. But we got our revenge on them, Andrew Luck style, so it's all good.
So Bear, you don't know much about USC. You never played them, right? When you were there, they play each other this year, correct?
Correct. Well, I never played against USC.
Yeah.
That's
so
correct.
USC. So how about this? So USC, very arrogant. They've won a lot of football games. My parents are UCLA grads. I grew up hating USC. I still very much dislike them. So after you beat them, their band still plays their fight song as you walk off the field. So 2007, we finally beat USC. We finally got over the hump. Reggie Bush was gone. Matt Leinart was gone. They actually had 12 guys get drafted on that defense. That entire defense got drafted. So good. We finally beat them. We're walking off the field, and their band, 100 strong, is playing their fight song as you walk off the field. It's infuriating. But they know they can get away with it because they travel their entire band to every game they go to. It's remarkable. And I think all teams in the Pac-12 generally do not like USC.
That's a fact.
Well, I agree. I've heard that, and I do know some USC guys, and it seems like they're kind of on an island of their own. But honestly, Alabama's kind of getting that way too, where a lot of teams in the SEC just kind of hate us because, we've had a lot of success. So I get it, and I understand, and that's kind of part of being on the pedestal. Like, Chiney, I'm interested to hear your take. I guess I've always wanted to ask you, women's basketball in general, does everyone hate UConn because they're, kind of the gold standard, or is that just you guys, or is that kind of a universal hate?
So since I play for the Connecticut Sun, I'm going to keep one hat on and say, no, not everyone hates it.
Oh,
But I'm ripping that hat off and be like, everyone, what's the softer word for hate?
Dislikes?
Everyone dislikes
Strong
UConn.
dislike.
And it's bad because they tend to say that UConn's bad for the game because everyone dislikes UConn. No, everyone dislikes UConn because they just can't beat them. And it's motivation for us. So yeah, it's UConn versus the world.
Are they
women's
cocky?
basketball.
Do they have kind of an attitude too?
That's the problem. They're not cocky. They're just so much more talented. I'm telling you, when I played against UConn, I was the only one from my team that got drafted. Granted, when I played against them, they had 5 people get drafted, like top 5. So you're going up against a pro team. So and we were a good team. So honestly, yeah, everyone does hate UConn, but I love Connecticut. I love the state of Connecticut. But yeah, don't mix it up with the argument that they're bad for the game because they've been the best thing for the game. They gave us the best women's Final Four. I bet you guys saw it. Mississippi State, Morgan Williams hit that shot that ended the streak, winning 4 consecutive national championships. So that moment wouldn't have happened without their greatness and everyone hating and trying to achieve it.
I get it. I love greatness. There's nothing I love more than seeing the "We Want Bama" sign. I love that.
Oh, good.
Everybody wants a piece of us.
As tough as this is for me to do,
and we are cocky.
I do not like the SEC at times. I will throw Alabama a bone because when I watch football, I like to watch Alabama play. It took me a while to say that out loud, but the defense, I'm tired of the spread offense and spreading everything out. I like Alabama. They're physical. They play defense. They hit people. And so I'll throw you guys a bone. I have moved from strong dislike to just maybe a little bit of dislike.
And they put
we,
points on the board, and that's fun to watch in football as well, obviously.
Yes.
This is The Locker Room on ESPN Radio.
And on the ESPN app.
Chris Sims made news this week, former Texas quarterback, claiming that he got paid while at Texas by some boosters. We always get wind of these situations happening after guys leave. I was a 3-star offensive lineman from California who went to Oregon. I got no money whatsoever. When I was in college, we got some free food at bars, and it changed as the years went on, actually. The first year was free. The next year we had a voucher. The next year it cost money, $5 maybe. The following year was full price. So that's about what we got as far as discounts and money. I don't know it's as prevalent as people make it out to be. I think that there's the high-profile guys who do get paid get a lot. That's why it seems like it happens all the time. I'll start with you, Barrett. You're in the SEC. You're in the South. Whispers that this happens more in the South than other regions. How do you feel about guys getting paid, and do you think it happens more in the South than other regions?
That's just jealousy. You guys are just jealous that we win, so we must cheat. First of all, I never got paid.
Well, Ole Miss did.
Allegedly.
They didn't win, though.
I'm kidding.
They didn't win either.
They beat us twice, unfortunately. Not when I was there. So I never got 1 cent. That's what I can tell you for sure, is that I never got paid anything. I never even took a free meal or anything, just because my approach was it wasn't worth it. Even a free meal was never going to be worth it to possibly get my university in trouble. So I was always really careful. Was never offered straight up cash or money or anything. So I never dealt with that. Now, do I think there are certain guys that do get paid? Probably. But do I think it's as rampant as people think it is? I don't. I don't even think it's close to as rampant. And I would say, at least at Alabama, I don't think it's a kind of system where the coaches are actively involved in steering certain boosters to pay a guy a certain amount. I think it's more just probably, if I had to guess the way it works, like Chris Sims says, it's probably just a situation where a booster gives a guy money. Now, again, I don't know because it's never happened to me and I've never seen it firsthand. But I will say, I feel like if it was going on at the university, if it was actively being channeled through the coaching staff, that I probably would have caught wind of it. So I don't think that exists. But like you said, Geoff, it probably does go on at some level, particularly during recruiting, to kind of sway a guy one way or another.
And I agree, Barrett. I never got paid, and I'm confident, as confident as you, in saying that no one at Stanford, to my knowledge, even in the rumblings, no one at Stanford gets paid, because we have this idea, and maybe that's what your philosophy is, that our payment is through our education. Getting a Stanford degree and getting a Bama degree, I know you're proud of it as well. It is payment. I mean,
are you contrasting those two?
No, I'm not. I'm saying getting a degree is payment because it sets you up for life, right? Equally. Anyways, but we may have never received the level of money. You said a couple free meals. we may never have received the level of money that freaks out the NCAA between the three of us, but I disagree with you. I think it is rampant. I've talked to so many athletes throughout different sports, and I think many people are getting paid. And if they're not getting paid, their parents or their family members might be getting paid, their best friends. I don't know if you're familiar with the AAU hoops world, but AAU coaches and AAU programs are getting paid not just by boosters, but also by... Well, you know what? Let me not spill too much tea. It is happening.
Well, I've heard basketball is way dirtier than football. That's what I've always heard, is that basketball is much worse because of the AAU stuff.
I think it's worse.
I think it's much worse because the infrastructure, if you invest in a kid in AAU and their team and their whole squad, their family, and then they make it to college and then they make it to the pros, those are lucrative individual contacts. Those are contracts that you're going to get money on if you've slid in there and can become their agent or bring a brand to them, right? But in football, there's so many more players, so it's a little bit more difficult to navigate that up, and even making that jump from the pros. Like, you can be a top player in football in high school, and that the landscape changes in college, and the landscape changes in the pros. In basketball, it's pretty much a sure bet. If you're 6'11" and can shoot when you're 15 years old, there's a sure bet that you're going to probably make good money.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's harder to predict for college to me, like in football. I mean, it's just, there can be a high recruited guy who ends up being a pretty average player, whereas in college, in basketball, it seems like generally the 5 stars are pretty good. I mean, I don't know.
And you know who they are from high school. And my thing is, okay, maybe you didn't receive dollars, but were you given gifts from boosters? Were you given experiences? There's so many different ways to define payment. And what I say about experiences, stay at my house for the weekend. Take the keys to the car. You go to a dealership, you want to buy your first car. Maybe there's a deal. That is happening, and it's real. And the NCAA is trying to deal with it. So as great as Alabama seems, and as great as Stanford has been in Oregon, there is a real problem that the NCAA is trying to deal with, which is why we always talk about, should athletes get paid or not? And they're saying, payment of their degrees is enough. Well, not really, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, Chiney, I'm interested to hear your take on this, if you don't mind, because especially since you're so educated because you went to Stanford, if athletes got paid out, because the fact is that really, generally at most schools, the only programs that are profitable are football at a few schools and sometimes basketball. So, what would be your take? How would you feel if only the football players got paid, and how do you think that would all work out kind of over the broader scope of college athletics? Basically, how do you think we can fix it? Well, what should it look like in 10 years?
I think that, that's a fascinating question. There's no one answer, but obviously bowl money is huge for universities. You see what bowl money does. Not only does it redesign your locker room, but it can also create opportunities. Like, sometimes the money from the bowl can help fund a lacrosse team or something that may seem in the peripheral. Like you mentioned, football and basketball always generates money. But the way the NCAA fixes this is first hearing the athlete's voice. We talked about the NFL and the NFLPA, me being on the WNBA, the WNBPA. You got to hear the athlete's voice. And correct me if I'm wrong, all we wanted, if we're not going to get paid for the time and effort and the decisions we make, we wanted a college experience. I don't know if we all got a real college experience because we were sacrificing so much. All we want is our voices to be heard and to have control of our bodies. For instance, if you're on the field for 4 hours and you're tired, you feel obligated as a player to go out there and play through your tiredness. No, I think there should be rules so that the athletes feel like they're in control of their experiences a little bit more, because a lot of times athletes get lost in this machine of the NCAA. And also, we were talking about degrees earlier when we were in the break. A lot of athletes feel like they can't pursue the degree that they wanted because they're afraid of their coaches or what they're going to say, or you have to change practice. There are certain ways to help athletes feel more control of their future, and that is payment itself. Obviously, I would love for everyone. We put in so much time and effort. I think everyone should get a little piece of the pie. But I do understand, like you said, football and basketball are the ones that really help underwrite the checks to keep everything in college full moving. Women's, men's sports in the peripheral, all that.
Yeah, I just don't really know how that would all work. It'd be so interesting to kind of see how it would develop, because there's just not enough money to pay everyone.
I don't know if I'm putting myself out there too much, but honestly, when what was his name from UConn? I can't remember the player from UConn. The little Shabazz Napier from UConn said he goes to bed hungry, and he doesn't have access to food. He said that on live television. NCAA got scared. All of a sudden, next day, they said, unlimited snacks. I was like, wait, hold up. If you can give us unlimited snacks, what else can you give us? So I love the NCAA. I'm the biggest advocate of the NCAA, but I do think that there needs to be better communication. And we got to speak up to let them know what we want so they can provide it in a way that we can maintain our happiness.
You're listening to Locker Room with Geoff Schwartz, Chiney Ogwumike, and Barrett Jones at ESPN Radio. Nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. To me, college athletes need to be able to market themselves and get paid off their marketing. So if you are a quarterback for a team, then you can market yourself. You can sign autographs. You can get a cut of your jersey sales. I also think there needs to be some sort of compensation for cost of living. I'll give you an example. My brother played at Cal Berkeley in Oakland. He lived in a three-bedroom apartment with four players, one bathroom, and he paid $990 a month for that. His scholarship check was $975 a month. So my parents had to compensate him to allow him to just live an average college life. Where me, Eugene, Oregon, I got $1,000 a month. My rent was $350. Pay a couple bills. I had $500 for the rest of the month. So I think that there needs to be some sort of way to compensate athletes who live in these areas that are very expensive. And then we need to be able to make money off our likeness. I was on a couple billboards in college at Oregon. I don't know if that drew in anybody else to Oregon, but we should get paid for those type of marketing opportunities.
And there's no better example than Johnny Manziel. I mean, I remember they were selling his jersey. They're like, oh, you can't sell his jersey as the NCAA. And then his jersey without his name, but everyone knew it was like in maroon, was on sale on the NCAA site. I mean, ask Jay Billis. He's personally made this his mantra. So, yeah, I completely am on the same page as you in opinion.
I might have gone to Oregon if I had seen a billboard with you on it. That's all I'm saying.
and my senior year, they took our helmets off for the billboards. They had our helmets on the first couple of years. And it was me and Max Unger, who currently plays for the Saints, all-pro center. And it was right outside the airport. So when you landed in Eugene, Oregon, and it was one way out of the airport, it was right up there. It was it said "Pave the way, win the day." I'm sure it was super. I had long hair, by the way.
Ooh.
Super fly. I'll send you guys a picture.
Wait, I want to toss a question though. Do you think, because people have always wondered, the NBA players are doing a great job marketing themselves. They're almost a brand now, full time. The NBA season ended and it's about to begin, and people are still talking about the news. We're talking about LeVar Ball, Barrett. My question is, do you think helmets hurts the marketability of players, like portraying them with helmets versus the other league? Yeah,
of course it does. But the NBA is. Here's the thing too, and we talked at the very beginning of the show about this. The NBA is player driven and the NFL is owner driven. I think that's the difference a lot of the times as well, is that the NBA, the players are so much more visible. They obviously don't wear helmets, but they drive the league. And the NFL owners and Goodell drive the NFL, and that's a big difference. And that's why I think that some NFL players are not as popular as NBA players.
Do you think that's changing, though? Are players making efforts like Odell, obviously?
Well, they are making efforts. I just don't know if it's going to change because the owners still control that. And we can get into a topic about the next CBA and what's going to happen. But I think now with social media and guys being more vocal on social issues, that guys are becoming more visible. And I don't think owners like it. I think that they'll publicly say they do, but then they like having the control.
Thanks for listening to the Locker Room Podcast. Make sure to subscribe by clicking the Listen tab on the ESPN app.